Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azawi. Torture has had a long history in Iraq. It was common practice during the reign of Saddam Hussein. Today, there is growing evidence of broad and systematic torture and human rights abuse in Iraqi prisons. Iraq's government, as well as the Kurdistan regional government, acknowledge the abuse. Both have vowed that the guilty parties will be prosecuted, but so far, not a single senior official has been prosecuted. The Iraqi government and a big slice of the world condemn the US for the Abu Ghraib scandal. So why is the Iraqi government silent about its own abuses?
Reports from international human rights organizations released recently claim that abuse and torture is prevalent in Iraq's prisons. Amnesty International's report in mid-April accused security forces in Iraq's autonomous Kurdistan regional government of abuses and torture in their prisons. Several months ago, the Human Rights Watch group reported inhumane living conditions in overcrowded government-run Iraqi jails in Baghdad. Many Iraqis are detained on mere suspicion, and most are held indefinitely as they are denied access to legal recourse, according to the Human Rights Watch. Many were reportedly killed indiscriminately by prison guards. There are currently more than 100,000 inmates in Iraqi prisons. The issue of arrests and torture in prisons appears to have a sectarian dimension. Sunni politicians have claimed there are at least 400 illegal, secret detention centres run by Iraq's Interior Ministry and linked to the Shia-dominated al-Maliki government.
The current government is deeply involved, and this is the evidence which have been submitted to the government, the United Nations, and the US forces and human rights organizations all over the world. This is decisive evidence that showed crimes against the Sunnis.
In 2006, a senior official from the Justice Ministry reportedly admitted that most prisons have been infiltrated by Shia militias and that his ministry is no longer in control of the situation. This recent BBC footage on the internet shows the appalling overcrowded conditions in one of Iraq's government-run prisons in Baghdad. There are fears that the situation will only get worse in the coming months as US troops prepare to hand over to Iraqi security forces military detention centres with more than 60,000 prisoners in the run-up to the agreed pull-out date of August 2010.
To discuss the controversial and explosive subject of torture and human rights abuse in Iraqi prisons, I'm delighted to welcome from Erbil, Mohammed Ihsan, the KRG Minister for Extra-Regional Affairs, and from London, Faraydun Hilmi, Kurdish affairs experts. Also from Erbil, Saeed Boumdouha, a researcher with Amnesty International. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Mohammed Ihsan, to start with, I'm delighted that you have accepted our invitation. We extended similar invitation to Iraqi officials and ministers in Baghdad. They all declined our invitation. You can understand why. The subject is very explosive. So, having said that, I don't want you to seem that as if this show is going to focus exclusively on the KRG. Explain to us, how is it possible that for the last 5 years, the Iraqi governments, both in Baghdad and Erbil, they tell us we have become liberals, we have become democracy, there is a rule of law, and yet, with the admission of the Iraqi government and the KRG, let alone Human Rights Watch Group, as well as Amnesty International, torture goes on systematically in these prisons?
First of all, I have to thank you for this opportunity, really. And I would like to explain it to you that there is two kinds of reports. First of all, there was Fear and Hope report coming from Amnesty International regarding human rights in Kurdistan, and it's so many human rights reports about all Iraqs in general. And we have to accept the reality that we are, after 2003 in Iraq in general, we have young democracy. We have just implementing some new methods of democracy in the country. And at the same time, Iraq, they are combating terrorists. We are at war at some stage with ourselves, with regional powers, with international terrorism, and we are building new institutions. This is why I think what you've heard and what we've been saying in reports is a good sign that all these international organizations can monitor what's going on inside Iraq in order to improve the ability and the performance of Iraqi government in the field of human rights.
Let me stop you here for just a second. I'll give you an opportunity to continue later on, Mohammed Ihsan, so we won't lose the argument. Faridoon Hilmi, the argument as presented by Mohammed Ihsan is exactly the rebuttal given by the Prime Minister of KRG, Nishirvan Barzani, and that is, we are doing our best. There has been an improvement. We don't deny the allegations of torture, so give us more time. From your vantage point of view, from the Westminster democracy, do you buy that argument? We have to crawl first before we can stand and run on our feet?
Well, Jassim, I think if I had heard this from Al-Sahaf, then I would have perhaps understood what he was talking about, because he was the Minister of Information, not of Human Rights. But coming from a Minister of Human Rights, I would have thought that his first concern would be for the people who are being tortured and killed in prison now, and not tell me something about a future, a possible utopian state that he's thinking about, that during which there was going to be democracy and nobody was going to suffer and there was going to be a heaven on earth. I can't believe that the Minister of Human Rights is talking a political stance and really talking as a Minister of Information, a propaganda minister.
As a matter of fact, Faridoon Hilmi, he is a Minister for Extra-Regional Affairs, but that's besides the point. Saeed Boumdouha, you were the researcher for Amnesty International. Pretty much you compiled the report, and the essence of the report is that certain officers within Asayish, which is the security apparatus of the KRG, they are beyond the pale of the law. Torture has been carried out, as well as forcible disappearance. Tell us exactly what is the gist of your report.
Well, the Amnesty report basically discusses a wide range of human rights violations that have been taking place in the Kurdistan region of Iraq over the last few years, including hundreds of people who have been arbitrarily detained without charge or trial, without judicial warrant, and without access to lawyers and families, as well as torture and ill treatment, cases of disappearances, unfair trials, the use of the death penalty, violence against women, as well as attacks on journalists and on media, basically. We sent 2 memorandums to the to the Kurdish authorities. We asked for their feedback, for their observations, and eventually we received their responses, and we tried to reflect those responses in Amnesty's recent reports.
Explain to us, why would a government need torture in order to survive? Why would al-Maliki's government need torture in Iraqi prisons in Basra, in Kut, in Amara? And why would the KRG need somebody to torture somebody, having been the victim for many, many years, if not decades, the Kurds? Now suddenly they practice it on their own people, as well as on Arabs and Turkmen from Kirkuk and other governorates.
That's good you started that question, but before answering you, I have to answer Mr. Faridoon in London. I'm never ever going to be part of any propaganda for any sort of government, because I lived all my life as a defender for human rights. And I never ever said that there is no torture in Iraq or even in Kurdistan. I've listened carefully to your introduction, because you mentioned we have a long history of torture. I agree we have long history of torture in Middle East in general, and up to the level, the psyche of the society, it gets used to torture, even in domestic level, in home, and in the government, in all levels. This is why don't accuse me to be Sahaf or anyone else, please. Second, you've mentioned in a lot of reports that torture is not part of our government's policy. If you look, the steps has been taken in Kurdistan to comparing to other areas, that the Amnesty itself, it published a press release that this is the first time Prime Minister of a region who gone through the whole report and read the report and take concrete measures to limit it, or at least to take steps to stop violation and tortures. We have to not forget, I'm not justifying what is going on, either in Kurdistan, neither here or in other part of the country. There is no sign of torturing any any Turkoman or any Arab in Kirkuk or any other areas. There is accusation. At the same time, there is some Kurdish accusation that local Arabs are terrorists and killing the other communities. There is different accusation against communities in Kirkuk and other parts of disputed areas.
Since we have the researcher from Amnesty International, Saeed Boumendouha, tell us what your research has found in addition to torture and human rights abuse in KRG. Is there any torture carried out against Turkmen and Arabs in these prisons?
Well, I mean, in the report we have documented basically cases of torture and ill treatment by the security forces, mainly the Asayish, and the victims they are from various ethnic groups or religious groups. But I think I should add that I mean, our visit here over the last 2 weeks, we have basically an Amnesty International delegation visiting the country, and we have been encouraged by what we have heard from the authorities, especially from the Prime Minister, who said himself that he has read the report very carefully, and he has basically instructed his government to take our recommendations into consideration. And we have been encouraged by statements by others, like a human rights minister, and also we have had detailed discussions with the directors of the Asayish in Erbil as well as in Suleymaniye. We would like the authorities to set up investigations into past violations, including cases of torture and also like disappearances. And we are also encouraged by the fact that the majority of the detainees have been now released. A lot of them were released last year, but there are still few people who have been held without charge or trial since 2000, 2001, 2002.
Saeed Boumendouha, thank you very much for joining Inside Iraq. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we will be joined by the former spokesman of the Iraqi government, Laith Kubba. Stay with us.
We cannot control the prisons. It's as simple as that. Our jails are infiltrated by the militias from top to bottom, from Basra to Baghdad. Pusho Ibrahim Ali Dazayeh, Iraqi Deputy Justice Minister.